So everyone, obviously you see we're hacking the planet today, and it means different things, and it's up to interpretation for different people. And such an esteemed group here. And so we're going to get right into this, and everyone, like each one of you, to do an intro. But behind us here, we have two, someone might call them relics, some may call them symbols for inspiration, others call them art. However we interpret that. We got a floppy disk and a VHS. So Chris, why don't you kick us off? But before you tell us your intro, what comes to mind when you see this behind you?
Well, first of all, good morning, and Jason, thank you, and thank you to the Z Prime team. I'm super excited to be here. So Jason hit us with this task. What do I think of when we look at what's behind us? And I actually think it's going to be the theme, more or less, of our panel, which is innovation is perpetual. I'll stop there. So Anterix, wireless technology company, we're driving advanced communications into the utility sector. We're enabling and underpinning a lot of what we're going to talk about that Jason and the team have put as far as themes for the next couple of days. 11 utility customers, actually 5 of them are here in the great state of Texas. They're building wireless networks across 18 states. So think, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, but for a utility. Utility-owned, utility-controlled. We have 150 technology partners that are building solutions for utilities. So the way we fit in is we want to underpin the evolution of the grid.
Becky?
Well, Jason, thanks for having me here. And sounds like this is on.
Are we on two?
Hello? Okay. Thanks for having me here, Jason, and what a great audience. And so your question about the VHS and the floppy disk, I guess there's an underlying assumption there that we actually recognize what they are, and we're old enough for that, and which would be the case. So I'm going in a different direction, but with the VHS, the first thing that came to mind was one of my first and favorite singers and musicians, and that was Bread. I don't know if y'all remember Bread, but anyway, that's where I first heard him, from a VHS. It was my siblings' hand-me-down. And then the floppy disk takes me back to college and my first Apple computer and the floppy disk. So those are fun memories. So thank you, Jason. And Becky Klein with Klein Energy, and Klein Energy is an advisory services and consulting company, and the group works with international and domestic companies that are wanting to penetrate and expand in the North American market. And so we will provide various forms of support. One is regulatory and policy support. Another is with help with time to market to identify and introduce the customers to key off-takers or key partners or joint venture partners. And the third is doing some analytical work on rates, electric rates, so helping the companies know how to plan, how to pivot, and how to best position. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
And Jason, Ryan?
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be back in San Antonio, and I'll refer to you as Smart Jason during our discussion. I'm Jason Ryan. I'm Executive Vice President at CenterPoint Energy. The thing I think about when looking at these, the first thing that came to mind was, be kind, please rewind. I don't know if you all remember. Like, you used to have to actually rewind a movie when you were done with it, as opposed to today's streaming technology. So I think incredible advancements in a short period of time, because it's been a long time since we got rid of these, and look forward to that continued innovation during our lifetimes. Super exciting. So at CenterPoint, we are an electric and gas utility business based in Houston. I'll primarily probably talk about our Houston electric business. We have the privilege to serve nearly 3 million homes and businesses in the greater Houston area. I'm a recovering lawyer, so I was general counsel of our company before taking my current role leading a number of our corporate functions, from the folks that deal with our largest customers in our utility growth area to helping folks at their homes and businesses with energy efficiency, to getting approval of our large infrastructure projects, and the regulatory and government affairs team that addresses policy issues as well. Good to be here.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. So we have a really broad topic. So our group has decided mainly to drill down on Texas and talk about the expertise they're seeing. But just the quick on mine, when I see the floppy disk in particular, it's like, where's it at? Because in college, I would always lose it and probably got a few Fs in there just for misplacing it. And if you probably know me well enough, you know that's no surprise at all. And my group mates were not very fond of me losing the floppy disk from time to time. Now back to innovation. So Jason, we'll start off with you, right? You just talked about CenterPoint Energy, the customers, all the things that are going on. But can you set the stage as what is your board, what are your customers' biggest challenges that you guys think about that keep you up at night, especially at the executive level in today's current moment?
So it is an exciting moment to be in this industry. I'll give you a little context about Houston. While you've been sitting here this morning, a couple dozen people have moved to Houston. Last 2 years, we've added 300,000 people in Houston. So it's a person every 6 minutes. The growth in Houston is relentless as it relates to population growth. You heard Rudy talk about San Antonio soon to be the 6th largest city, now the 7th. Houston will be the 3rd largest pretty soon. We're currently the 4th. We'll overtake Chicago here shortly. And then when you talk about business, Houston is an increasingly international city. 1 in 4 Houstonians is foreign-born. 1 in 3 in the workforce is foreign-born. And in Houston, we make things. The port of Houston, in terms of value of stuff that's exported, surpasses LA and New York combined. We send things out all over the world, right? We're not a port that has empty containers just waiting to be picked up and taken somewhere else. We send stuff out all over the world. We've got the largest petrochemical complex on the planet, the largest medical center in the world, and we're continuing to grow. The size of growth and the pace of growth is something that keeps me up at night, to make sure that we can deliver for our customers and our communities at their speed, not our speed, but at the speed of business, not at the speed of a utility. And those two things historically have been very different. And so it's changing the culture and mindset of our entire organization to rise to this moment of growth. And it's not just growth for growth's sake. Growth is actually how we will keep rates affordable. Because affordability is another very important topic to our customers and to our communities. And the reason why growth is so important on affordability, there are a couple of empty seats in here, not many, but my costs are largely fixed, which means the more people you add to the system, the more cost-effective it is for everybody. So if I needed to collect $1 from everyone in this room, like a total of $1, you would want more people in the seats next to you, right? Because then you would pay me less. And the same thing works for our electric grid. We charge today about the same as what we were charging a dozen years ago. So a dozen years ago, our part of the bill was $49.50. Today, we are $49.9 on an average electric bill in Houston. There's not many things that you pay the same today that you paid a dozen years ago. And the reason why we are there is because of growth. More people soaking up the fixed charges of the grid, and the incremental cost to add them to the grid is far outweighed by the benefit of adding them to the grid. So that growth that keeps us up at night to make sure we can move at the speed of business is actually going to benefit our customers into the future like it has for the last dozen years. If the growth that we expect to see in Houston over the next 5 years occurs, our residential customers as a whole will see their bill go down by $4 billion over a 10-year period. That's real affordability benefit if we can get this growth right, and maybe we'll peel back some of the things that could be standing in our way.
And Chris, I'll turn it to you because you started off talking about some of the success here in Texas, and you've had a view of regulators and policies across the U.S. But can you share from your perspective what those executive leaders that you guys are working with, why do you think Texas has been successful, maybe not just from an Anterix point of view, but why you see innovation happening here in Texas?
Yeah, I think I have to start off by saying to Jason and the other Texans in the room, everything's better in Texas, right? I think the state, well, first of all, let's go micro then macro. The state of Texas as compared to other states, I think, is experiencing more frequently and more actively a new reality for utilities than many other states, right? Obviously, you have load growth. You have load growth because of population. You have load growth because data centers are popping up everywhere. You have more frequent, more destructive weather patterns, right? We had Uri, it was about a half dozen years ago. Is it that far, right? So you have wildfires now popping up in the state. You have cyber incursions. You have a call for distributed energy and decarbonization. Maybe a little bit of a pause on some of that at the federal level, but you're still seeing it from utility to utility, and all of that new reality is leading to an absolute need to invest and to innovate. And so what we're seeing, I think we have 94% of the counties in Texas under contract. What we're seeing is the utilities within the state are talking to one another, and they're collectively realizing and embracing the need to innovate their technology future. And we simultaneously, Jason, the theme is when innovation outpaces regulation. I actually think between ERCOT and between the regulators within the state, I think we're actually seeing a recognition that investment is the only way to address this new reality. So it excites us as a company because we're starting to see a relationship from utility to utility and from innovative, sort of technology companies to each of those utilities as well. And it's beginning to sort of grow almost organically, what can be done if you advance and enhance your technology within your grid operations. So, I know throughout the next couple of days we're going to talk about AI, and we're going to talk about data. Data is the new fuel for utilities, and being able to capture it and aggregate it and act upon it, and doing it in a real-time way is going to really enhance, Jason and others, your ability to make sure you integrate that population growth and load growth in a way that is good for customers and not disturbing for customers.
And Becky, if you have some comments on what you heard, but also your unique expertise both from the commission side, advising utilities, and then also getting to advise startups. I think my question would be, what are those challenges that the innovators you work with every day, what are those roadblocks they see that they would like to see or changes from either the commission or regulators?
Well, let me start first with the regulator's mindset. As Jason is a recovering lawyer, I'm a recovering regulator. And I think in the context of what both Chris and Jason were saying as far as the the magnitude of demand here in Texas and ERCOT, especially just 10 days ago, to put it in quantitative terms, ERCOT announced that it was just under 400 gigs that are in the queue for interconnection here in ERCOT. So that's about 400% greater than our peak demand today. It's staggering. Of course, not all of that will be interconnected, but when you think about, that's primarily data centers, as Chris said. It's also oil and gas and manufacturing and population growth generally. I think what we're seeing is the speed of change and that rate of change. And so speed to power is the objective for tomorrow, but speed to policy and speed to transformation is the challenge for today. So the paradox that the regulator faces today is that they're making rules, implementing protocols, opining on dockets based on technology that's not fully and completely understood. But rules are important to provide some level of certainty anyway. And so when you get a rule wrong, rules naturally become sticky and calcify. They shape markets. They can block certain new entrants. They can lock in yesterday's assumptions of power systems. And as we all know, yesterday's assumptions are already stale today. So there's fortunately other ways and I think philosophies in Texas that we'd like to try to adhere to, and that is really incenting and regulating and policy making based on the performance outcome that you want, not the technology that you're trying to drive. So do what's good for the grid and good for the market, and innovation will deliver it. So when you have a rule that's put in place to that extent, innovation accelerates. When you have a wrong rule, then the queue becomes the product. And that's kind of from the regulator's perspective and the quandary. As far as the startups, I will say that there's two primary things, but let me start with one especially, and I'll sum it up in one word. And these are pain points for technologies, whether it's the big grid, the transmission grid, or whether it's the distribution grid, and that's transparency. And actually, transparency has three different dimensions to it. One is, for the market as a whole, it's price signals, is being able to have parity and equity in all stakeholders being able to see and play and interact with the same price signal opacity. And so right now you have C&I customers that are able to leverage the 4 coincident peak price signals and flex. And that's great for the grid, right? And great for consumers overarchingly. But when you have distribution energy resources that don't have that line of sight as clearly or as quickly, or can't play in an ancillary service or demand response mechanism, then that technology isn't being fully optimized on behalf of the grid, on behalf of the consumer, on behalf of innovation. So that's market signals. Number 2 is transparency in process. So if it's large load or if it's DERs in the small grid, there is a real lack of transparency into where the interconnection process is at any given time. And, there's countless episodes, and I'm glad to hear Jason is talking about CenterPoint holistically transforming, and would love to hear more about that. And I see it, from afar, some of the technologies that y'all are integrating in various different aspects. But it's solvable so that you can have a customer being able to understand where they are in the process, where there's, if individuals at a utility being overloaded with all kinds of a tsunami wave of, customers knocking on the door and wanting the same thing, then you can have technology solve the problem, like having some real transparency on a dashboard. Where is my project at any given time? And you don't have to be such a burden to the process. It's not only technology, but it's also, I think, really internal transformation of business processes, dynamic work design, and taking customer service to a new science. I think about the Mayo Clinic and MD Anderson when I think about it, how they have floods of patients coming in their door, and they have concierge service for every single person. And they come to you and provide what you need in a timely and a complete way. And it's like, well, why can't we do that? And we can do that, by being able to integrate technologies, but also transforming our workflow and how business units interact differently. And, it sounds easy, it's hard, and it takes time. The other thing is human capital management. So, just thinking about developing your current workforce and your prospective workforce as far as being digitally savvy, AI fluency, and a perspective for customer service is really going to be important to be part of the solution for the future and not part of the problem of the future. So that's, I think, the dimensions of there's one more dimension of transparency that I'd love to just emphasize that you see over and over again, and that's transparency of the stakeholders with the community. And we're seeing more and more across the United States about the data centers being just rebuffed by communities because of not understanding how they're going to utilize the water. What are they going to do for the electric bills and affordability? What's the sound pollution going to be like? What are they going to do for the roads? And so having that transparency and relationship building and trust. And so, that trust relationship building, I think, is an important theme. It started with our keynote speaker with Hugh that talked about it, relationships. That thread was pulled with the previous panelists talking about, the whole line of trust and relationships with the community, so important. So I think that's really important going on with the dialogue and information sharing with the community so that they're part of the process.
And Chris, I want to turn to you because I think some of the things that Becky had mentioned as like the innovator right on stage and knowing the background. And so one, there has to be a buy-in from your board. Your executive team has to really understand that. And then you got a customer base too that you're very familiar with there. So what was it about the leadership that really made you guys, and I say that in the context of ETS, we get to see a lot of innovators, it's just 13 years, but probably 90% of those guys aren't here. Yeah. And that's just a reality of any business, but in this one in particular, knowing that you guys have fought those battles, you live for another day, like what is it about a leadership point of view to survive just all these challenges that were just been mentioned? Like there's definitely something there that you guys are doing it right today, or it could change tomorrow, we don't know, but very be interested in what you see from there and advice out here to the audience.
Yeah, and my answer is going to fit into the context of the panel and the title of the panel because it's actually how we had to approach what we wanted to do. We have been in front of NARUC and the regulators as much as we've been in front of executives at the utility space, as much as we've been in front of executives across our 150 vendor ecosystem, because there wasn't a single, I would say, use case that drove adoption of wireless broadband. What we had to do, we actually created a trade association, the Utility Broadband Alliance, We went and got legislation passed. We got information and language into legislation. There's probably a business school, case study somewhere, within that. But our goal, and we were founded by the gentleman that founded Nextel, and when he founded Nextel, he believed that, public safety needed devices that were as robust as, we had with our children. He repeated that with Anterix. And so our effort was educate at every level and do it in a way that supports, our customers' mission. And so for the West Coast, adoption was really driven by wildfire mitigation. And for some, it was just digitization of everything they wanted to do. And others, it was, pushing SCADA and enabling SCADA and being able to connect remote substations. And so we always looked at it as each of our efforts were incremental, right? We were bringing each, and by the way, we were learning simultaneously as well. We have our first chief product officer who's in here in the audience, right? We didn't realize that we needed to embrace products in order for the utilities to really understand what it meant to pull their communications platform along. But we believed we were driving innovation, but we realized we had to innovate at the same time. And we also realized none of it was going to happen, particularly in the IOU community, if you didn't bring the regulators along. So we did everything from Department of Energy to members of Congress to a trade association to each individual. And we never want to get between Jason and his regulators, but we can educate more at the macro level, in the NARUC committees and really make them understand that investment is a necessity, right? Affordability is important. Affordability means nothing if your electric power goes off, right? So there has to be, yes, accessibility, affordability are key, but you have to be able to deliver. And so that was what really drove and drives us, is continuing to educate at every level. We're fortunate now with 11 utility customers, they're educating each other. They love the idea of having this scale. We've added 4 just this year, so we knock on wood, we hope the pace is picking up. But our goal really is to support the technology evolution of utilities and do it in a way that matches with their capital availability and the evolution of what they're trying to do.
And Jason, I remember last year at ETS, you got called to the Capitol. You spend a lot of time talking to regulators, legislators there. What are you seeing that's different from today, that the questions they're asking that they were asking 10 years ago? I mean, Chris pointed out, right, so it's been affordability, reliability, but there's this new dynamic. So what are they asking of you differently?
Increasingly, we have conversations around resilience, in addition to the growth, right? I would say that it's most helpful when policymakers approach things with a learning mindset, when you are dealing with something that we've never dealt with before. And again, that's true whether it's growth, it's true whether it's technology, whether it's resilience. And I am increasingly seeing people receptive to trying to understand the challenges of how to get off go with something to meet the needs of the moment. And that's very refreshing to see from policymakers. I try to get the 9,000 men and women at Centerpoint to have a learning mindset when they're approaching their work. And so, it's very refreshing to see that from policymakers. But I'll touch a little bit on the resilience, because it's something that is increasingly an expectation that in our business, we take a punch from Mother Nature and get back up quicker. And there are only so many things that you can do to address that resilience once the thing happens. You put lines underground, you can segment the system to have fewer outages when something happens to a distribution line, for example. But the most exciting conversations we have with policymakers are the things that we're doing to anticipate what kind of response we'll need to have to an event by technology that helps us predict how many outages we would have, technology that helps us identify risks before they turn into an outage, whether that's looking at vegetation, trees, that kind of thing. And the level of interest with that technology and the learning mindset that they bring to the table is how we will get better bad outcomes for our customers when we have those resilience events happen, right? They will cause outages, but if you're more prepared on the front end and you know exactly what you need to do to respond to it, you can address that outage quicker, you can take the punch and get back up quicker. And again, the learning mindset is something that I try to have interesting information, some show and tell to help get people interested in asking those questions. And I think that will, if it continues, that will help us get through doing some of the things that we've never had to do before.
Thank you. I'd like to invite the audience up for questions here for our distinguished panel while we have some time. And Becky, while hopefully there's a brave soul that wants to ask you guys a quick question, knowing your background and the work you did on the legislation in Texas, or in your early work there, what can the legislators and policymakers learn from the method you guys use that if they took some of that playbook a little bit today could really benefit how we move forward and increase the speed of regulations to keep pace with innovation? And again, anyone who has a question, please step up to the mic here and we'll get to you right after Becky.
Well, back in 1999, when we passed Senate Bill 7, which restructured our entire market, we made a philosophical and comprehensive commitment to free markets and competitive markets as being the best way to offer innovation, to offer affordability and resilience. And so I think that is really important today, to be able to hearken back and remind ourselves continually about that commitment, because one of the things about human nature that is so natural for us is that we get nervous and anxious and scared when there's volatility, when there's scarcity, when there's extremes, and our impulse is to be able to control that, to mitigate it, to distill it. And so we see that in certain facets around the edges in our market, whether it's more conservative procurement positioning, whether it is kind of curtailing some entrants from access to certain market systems, ancillary service or demand response services, whether it's capping some market price signals. So it's natural for us to do that. But I think we need to make sure that, it's a fine line to walk when, on the one hand, we want, smooth and calm, and then on the other hand, we want resource adequacy and liquidity and innovation. And so, the best cure for high prices is high prices, because then capital flows where there is a return and it meets the needs of the grid and of the market as a whole. And so we've seen that across the globe, as over 20 years ago, we went on jaunts to Australia, California, Pennsylvania, to see how they started their restructured markets. And we took some best practices from each of those. And then constructed some of our own tailored rules. And necessarily when we see those markets and then others that have instilled, good free market systems for power and energy, that they've provided efficiency in operations. There's less friction in the processes. And more efficiencies means more affordability and less customer cost. And so we've also seen that free markets are cleaner markets. So the electrons are really agnostic, whether it is from solar, whether it's from batteries, wind, nuclear, fossil fuel. It's agnostic because capital flows to where it can make it a return, and innovation will come and bring a solution. But it's hard to have faith in some of those volatile price signals. It's hard to have faith in some of those extreme prices. And so what I would just say is that if our policymakers can continue to keep the course with what we started over 20 years ago with transparent market signals and free markets as a whole.
All right, thank you. And question, if you don't mind just saying your name and who you're with, and then get your question to the panel.
Thank you, Jason. Matthew Sadinsky with pre-qualified ready employees for power, PREP. We usually take veterans and prepare them for careers in the energy sector. This topic, innovation outpaces regulation. One of the biggest areas of regulation related to our future collectively is education. How are the utilities plugging into innovation in the way our K through 14 and college kids can prepare for careers in the new future? Some people say AI is going to take all the jobs. We know people who learn AI will have many jobs. So how are you investing in the community? It kind of relates back to the other community resource centers. How could they take good success and make the utility a bastion of engineering more valuable in the community to make people prepared for careers of the future?
Yep, I'll take that one. So, and it's important not only for the pipeline of our future workers, but it's important for the folks that are in the seats today as well, right? So we have failed to really train our employees over the last 2 decades. We have no formal training program on what it means to be a leader. We have no formal training program on how to embrace innovation. And then we wonder why we're not embracing innovation and we're having trouble leading through the biggest change in our industry since electrification after World War II. So we are embarking on a training program for our existing employees that I think is worth noting, starting with the top 200 leaders on how to lead an organization and how to embrace innovation. And we're partnering with Rice University to do that. We are blessed to have tremendous institutions in our backyard that we have failed to use over the last 20 years, right? So in addition to that, we are working with technical schools all the way down to elementary schools on training the next group of leaders, talking about our industry, getting folks interested in our industry. We talked about how many people are coming to Houston, but a significant percentage of people graduating from high school and even graduating from college are struggling to make a living wage. We shouldn't be struggling to make a living wage when there are really good paying jobs in the utility and energy industry with a little bit of technical training. You could qualify for that. So we've partnered with some local organizations to take kids while they're still in high school, run them through some technical training, how to weld, right? If you want to be a lineman, we'll get you going in that program. And that is, the average hourly wage for those trade jobs are significantly higher than what's not available absent, a 6-week training course. So partnering with local technical schools to make those jobs available for our community is how we will train the next generation of workers, but also have a successful community at the same time, right? By having more people that can access a living wage.
Hey, Jason, can I piggyback on that question? It's a great question, and I just feel very compelled to do a shout out to Avista Corporation. And you heard Letitia and Mike here in the previous panel. Ruben's also in the audience, but that's a small, medium cap utility that boxes way above its weight class. And I think they do some really innovative things. And it starts at the top. So, for example, in the compensation metrics that the board sets, it has an actual metric for innovation. And there's certain goals the company has to meet related to innovation. And it has to do with human capital management. It has to do with actual technology innovation. And so it goes all the way down the chain. And what they promote is that from the bottom down, everybody has a voice to come up with great ideas, and those great ideas are then pitched to the next level, and if they make it, they're pitched to the next level, and then the executive team looks at, okay, what's come up there, and they'll actually look for employees' ideas to commercialize. And then the company will go out and strive to commercialize that. And we've had exceptional successes, and we've had failures. But that's the culture of the company, and it goes all the way from top to bottom. And guess what? Then we start attracting people and recruiting people that naturally are hardwired that way. So you have to put the mechanisms in place from the top down that really builds the culture over time for innovation and development and training.
Get one more question here, and then we'll wrap up after this.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Tunde Patosha. I'm with Motive Power and NPUC. Motive Power is our decarb consulting arm, and NPUC is our research and decision advisory and support arm. So my question today is, we've talked a lot about innovation resilience, and a lot of the paths we talked about today are really focused on the happy path. What happens when things go well, and how to ensure that they stay on the happy path. So my question is, what's something that keeps you up at night when we're talking about deviations from things going the way they're supposed to, and more so, how do you, if at all, build for those unhappy paths?
Just a quick note before you guys answer. We have about 2 minutes, so who wants to chime in if y'all guys want to?
Yeah, one thing that I keep an eye out on is where we have deviations and the organization normalizes that. I think the normalization of deviations will kill a culture of an organization, right? Where you're like, oh, well, I know we didn't get that right, but that just kind of is what it is. As opposed to really focusing and tackling the root cause of an issue. And it could be something as simple as, are the bills that we send out right? We have an entire organization that deals with exceptions on the bills when the system spits them out, right? Some implausible, high bill, some implausible low bill, and when the organization just works the exceptions but doesn't actually go to the root cause, that's an example of normalizing the deviations. Well, we just have all these exceptions, so I guess my team will get to work on them, right? And so I think that the biggest challenge for us is addressing that as part of our renewed focus on culture, that focus on outcomes, not activity, right? And bubble up the root cause and go fix it. And tell us you need help if you need help. You know, we have never imposed any kind of budget limits when it comes to fixing a problem that's causing issues with our customers. You know, what organization would not take advantage of that, right? And so the more we talk about the need to address those problems deep within our organizations, I think the more our employees will welcome that. But it's been a surprisingly slow start to get our leaders to embrace that. And that goes back to the training of, we need to train our leaders how to lead and save all the human struggle that goes on in our organization where you just churn on activity and don't address the root cause of it.
Chris, I'll give you the final word to close out.
I would say I actually think the sector is doing a very good job at getting more proactive instead of reactive. I think the reality of what they're facing is sort of accelerating that, but I do think there is a great desire to try to get ahead of the evolution and the things that could really impact customers. So I think we're in a good space. We're going to learn more about it over the next couple of days. But I'm confident, I'm comfortable that the sector is heading towards a really good place of trying to ensure that we don't have those dark days.
Well, Chris, Jason, Becky, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, audience, for listening to this great panel. Thank you.